Okay, so I just want to speak briefly about the ongoing situation in Burundi. Burundi is a very small country located in East Africa, and for those who don't know, it's in a region that has long been plagued by tribal conflicts. Um, and the origins of these conflicts are very complex but devastating. The Democratic Republic of Congo, Burundi, Rwanda, and Uganda, all four countries have been plagued by years of civil unrest, civil war, chronic poverty, and dictatorship. And I think if things don't get under control in Burundi, we could again see an onslaught of severe bloodshed. The situation is volatile. In 2015, there was violence that cost up to 800 lives, and a few days ago, 26 more people died in violence, and there's been sporadic on and off violence since 2015. This relates to the possibility that President Pierre Nkurunziza will extend his presidential mandate to 7 years. And if he then wins re-election, so his term of office comes to an end in 2020, if he has the right to run again, then in theory he could run for 7 years and another 7 years. The Guardian newspaper is suggesting that he could therefore be in power until 2034, which might be speculative, but given the history, let's say, leaders clinging on to power in this part of the world, it wouldn't be surprising. Um, Now, it should be said, Patrick, this is I'm quoting from the Guardian newspaper, excuse me, Patrick Kajayande, senior project leader for the Great Lakes region of the South Africa-based Institute for Justice and Reconciliation, said the atmosphere in Bujumbura, the capital, was calm ahead of the vote. It is giving me hope. There is no feeling of threat, he said. There are no problems between supporters of different political parties. The opposition is getting space on national TV. There is some sporadic violence in some areas, but at a very low level. And he claimed that Burundi was being criticized by countries and organizations in the West because the country had a tendency to be close to China and Russia. Now, that to me sounds like an excuse. The BBC and Voice of America have been banned from the country, right? Um, if the president has nothing to hide, then why is he banning international news networks? Um, it's important to look at the history of Burundi to understand why there are concerns. This is a country that has witnessed not one but two genocides, or events described as genocide. 1972, the mass killing of Hutus, and 1993, the mass killing of Tutsis. In the first incident of violence, as many as 300,000 people may have died. The lower figure is 80,000 in the year 1972. Um, and that was, a conflict even then that probably didn't get the attention it deserved um, because other conflicts were taking world headlines at that time, Vietnam in particular. Then, more recently, 1993, the mass killing of Tutsis, in which up to 25,000 people died. Now, that was in the backdrop of the Burundi Civil War. Actually, it was the same year that the Burundi Civil War, the event described as the Burundi Civil War, began in 1993, lasting until about 2006. But the truth is, this is always a volatile region. Tens of thousands of people have died in Hutu Tutsi violence, and it would be absolutely pointless pointing fingers and saying who started it because both sides have blood on their hands. I think the risk is sure we shouldn't exaggerate. It's not necessarily looking like Rwanda, but in recent weeks there has been a lot of hateful rhetoric on radio and so on, and that's precisely what initiated the Rwanda genocide when so-called Hutu Power Radio um, initiated the Interahamwe militias by describing their enemies as privileged, as serfs of the Belgian colonists, puppets of the Belgian colonists, etc. That sort of constant rhetoric will lead to real tensions on the ground. So I hope this de-escalates. Um, Similar situation in the DRC. Joseph Kabila is refusing to step down from power. There's been violent clashes in Kinshasa. It's just an utter tragedy. Burundi is one of the world's poorest countries, and it's just a tragedy that this stubbornness at the top to recognize the situation, to recognize dissent. Um, I think Pierre Nkurunziza needs to reach out to all Burundians, and if he doesn't, what we're going to see is a very dangerous situation. So just leave it there. If you're Burundian, let me know your thoughts. I'm not making this to offend anyone. I'm just pointing out the facts as I see them. Um, when you have a history of ethnic violence, there is always a possibility that old scars could reopen, old wounds could reopen. And I just hope Burundi doesn't return to the nightmare of the 1972 genocide, the 1993 genocide, and the very costly civil war, up to 300,000 people killed. And the violence in Burundi got overshadowed by the better documented Rwanda genocide, but it's actually interrelated. Thanks for watching.